Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Well, again, it is the end of the week and it's time to take a look at how the market, the freight market, as well as the trucking landscape changed over the past week. Now, due to popular demand, obviously you guys don't like to hear me talk that much, I'm just kidding, but due to popular demand, I decided to keep the format that I did last week, which is a shorter and more concise and more understandable freight market update. So let's go ahead and look at some data. Ready? Let's go! So as always, we first look at the net change in carrier authorities. How many carriers did we gain or lose over the past week? Now, the week before, just in 1 week, we lost over 2,000 carriers. This week, however, it's only 22 carriers lost. Well, actually, as of last Friday. So yeah, it's not a lot, but it's still a negative net change in carrier population. Now, if we take a look at the total amount of freight out there, the total load volume, the solid blue line right here, this is us, everything else is prior years. And currently we are above the 2018-2019 levels, but of course below the 2020 and 2021 crazy volumes that we saw. In terms of tender rejection rates, this is us at the bottom right here. We're at 3.73%. Now, compared to the previous 5 years, we can see that we're doing much worse than in the prior 5 years, except for maybe the 2022 levels, which was slightly above this year. However, something that we should note is that the rejection rate did increase week over week from last week. Last week it was 3.61%, now it's 3.73%. All right, when it comes to diesel prices, we can see that we're still on our way down. Last week it was $4.25 average, now it's $4.19 average per gallon on a national level. Now, if we take a look at the diesel map, just remembering the fact that the darker an area, the more expensive the diesel, we can see that still the West Coast and the the Northeast are still the places where the diesel is highest. In the West Coast, it's up to or above $5.60, as well as Pennsylvania. But in the middle, it's a safe place to refuel. All right, now let's take a look at spot market conditions, starting with volumes. It's probably too small to see, but something that's worth celebrating is that all three trailer types, dry vans, reefers, and flatbeds, saw volume increases on the spot market. Now, if we take a look at dry vans, we can see that it was a huge increase in spot loads, the last blue bar, and it's definitely following that 5-year dotted line pattern, and it's the closest it has been to that 5-year average in a while. Reefers also saw an increase in the spot market volume, quite a jump, but still lower than 2 weeks ago, which is a bummer. So we're gonna see what happens next with reefers. Now, as for flatbed spot loads, we can see there was an increase, and it actually is at 2022 levels now in terms of load volumes. The orange line is 2022, but still way below that 5-year average. All right, now on to the average spot rates, starting with dry vans. Dry vans saw an increase in spot rates, and finally we're above that $2 mark at $2.06 on average, which is about a 6-cent increase from last week. Let's take a look at flatbed spot rates. Flatbeds also saw a tiny minimal increase to around $2.30 per mile. Now, this is about a 2-cent increase from last week. Finally, we have reefers. Reefers also saw a minuscule little increase in rates to around $2.32 per mile, also about a 2-cent increase from last week. So in general, if we take a look at these, it looks like dry vans are the ones that are seeing the most positive change. Doesn't mean that they're doing the best, just the most positive change week over week so far. Now let's take a look at the most volatile markets, starting with volumes. This is for all equipment types. Red means there was a strong decrease week over week. Green means a strong increase. And we can see that volumes increased pretty much everywhere except for these plain states. This is nothing to be super excited about per se, because the reason this map is showing such a strong increase is because the week before it showed a huge decrease due to the Thanksgiving holiday, but still something to be happy about. Now, in terms of rejections for all equipment types, again, green is good, it's an increase, red is a decrease. We can see that the West Coast, Kansas, Nebraska, some of the southern states, North Dakota, portions of the eastern states saw some rejection increases. However, the northern states right here, Nebraska, Iowa, South Dakota, Minnesota, and most of the eastern and southeastern states, they saw either a decrease in rejections from last week or no change. Now let's take a look at some head haul maps for dry vans, reefers, and flatbeds. And what these show us, they show us market areas where there are more trucks than loads and where there are more loads than trucks. So it basically gives us an idea where are you going to have an easier time negotiating. So for this map, and this is the dry van, the red areas are areas where there's overcapacity, too many trucks, too few loads. Blue areas is where there are more loads than there are trucks. So nothing really changed from last week. Southern California, Reno, Nevada, Pendleton, Oregon, a lot of the Midwestern states and some of the southern states are seeing a lack of capacity compared to the amount of volume. The Northeast, Florida, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and of course all of these northern states, there's overcapacity galore. Now let's take a look at reefers. For reefers, a little bit of a different situation. The best places to be in terms of negotiating power is Central California as well as Twin Falls, Idaho. Now the Midwest is pretty light blue for the most part, which means, yeah, there's still more loads than there are trucks, but nothing crazy. The Northeast, the Southeast, the South, the northern states right here, overcapacity. Now for flatbeds, and I use the DAT Market Map here because Sonar does not provide this data for flatbeds, unfortunately. It's actually the opposite. Red is where there are more loads than trucks, and blue is where there are more trucks than loads. So for flatbeds, the good areas where you can negotiate is Oregon, portion of Montana, Spokane, Washington, and the South right here, right? And a portion of Pennsylvania, as we can see. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, something I have also learned from experience is that the Midwest, even though it's not bright red, it's not even really orange, it's more yellow, it can be a good place if you're willing to wait for all those other trucks to book crappy loads. Finally, we have our favorite two maps. Where do you need to go to grab relatively better opportunities, starting with reefers? So for reefers, it's the Twin Falls, Idaho area where the rejection rate is 42.49% ton of volume. We have the Pendleton, Oregon area right here, as well as the Portland, Oregon area, which is around 33.33% rejection. We have the Fargo, North Dakota area, 37.83% rejection. And in terms of the Midwest, I'm sure you can see it already, it's dying off. And the funny thing, there is a pattern. The better the rejection rate, the less volume in that area. So if you end up in a place like Iowa, the rejection levels are high, but there is not going to be much to choose from, right? In Indiana, though, there is a ton of volume, but there's almost no rejection, so the rates are not going to be great. So the Midwest is questionable right now. Now, as for dry vans, the Pendleton, Oregon and Spokane, Washington area both have around 24% rejection. However, be careful, there's not a ton of volume there. And then there are the Midwestern states. This is what I call the Midwest, which are from 8 to 13% rejection. Last week, it was around the 10% rejection mark. Now, specifically, the good places are Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana, actually, for dry vans next week. So that's all I have for you guys today. Finally, some seasonality is starting to show when it comes to volumes, especially spot market volumes. However, with rates, with the exception of dry vans, there is still much to be desired, unfortunately. And this is because of the overcapacity, which we actually saw in the head haul maps. Now, a question for you guys. Are you feeling any sort of improvement in the market over the past week or so? Because personally, I feel like it hasn't been getting better, but it hasn't been getting worse. It's been kind of flat. Now, also, I quickly wanted to throw it in there because I get a lot of questions about where this data comes from, where are the charts from. Well, my primary source is FreightWave Sonar, which is basically a subscription-based database of different information pertaining to the trucking industry. And then I use also FTR Intel, which is free if you want to look at their spot market reports, as well as the DAT Market Maps for the flatbeds. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching and joining me today. Wishing you all a fantastic rest of your week and an amazing weekend. See you in the next video.